Hi everyone, welcome to Paul Programs. Today we're talking about weakness systems. So, what are weaknesses in games? Weaknesses are designed exploits meant to give players some kind of advantage over enemies or other players. First, we're going to take a look at some weakness systems in games. Then, we're going to look at two different approaches to making weakness systems. Lastly, we'll dive into some code and show how you can build out a weakness system. A good example of a simple weakness system is rock, paper, scissors. Here you have rock being stronger than scissors, scissors being able to cut through paper, and paper being able to wrap up rock. Another good example of a weakness system are the Mega Man games. In Mega Man, you have to fight 8 different robot masters. Every time you beat one, you actually gain an ability. This ability can then be used against another robot master and do extra damage compared to your regular Buster Cannon. Role-playing games are one of the genres that heavily use weakness systems. In the modern Persona games and Shin Megami games, players are able to experiment to discover enemy weaknesses. Meanwhile, there are games like Fire Emblem Heroes, which uses a system very similar to rock, paper, scissors, where certain weapon types give you an advantage over units that use a different weapon type. Then, there are games like Monster Hunter that feature a weakness system based on equipment typings. Now that we've taken a look at a few different weakness systems in different games, let's take a look at two different approaches to designing a weakness system. The first system that we're going to take a look at is a cyclical approach. What this means is, similar to rock, paper, scissors, A will be stronger than B will be stronger than C, and then C will be stronger than A, thus completing a full cycle. The other system I want to discuss is a grid-like system. So this means you have an enemy who can have different strengths or weaknesses to different weapons, armor, skills, or other attributes in your game. So the best way to design something like this would be something like an Excel sheet where you can list all your enemies and then go across and mark what things they're weak against or what things they're actually stronger against. Now that we've taken a look at these two different approaches, let's dive into some code. But before we dive in, we're going to have our code actually try and emulate a system similar to the grid system used in modern Persona games. So what does this mean? This means we're going to have an enemy and then we're going to pretty much assign some kind of weakness. When a player attacks that weakness, they'll gain an extra turn. So let's jump in. Here we have our variables. We are using a vector in order to store our weakness data for an enemy. This will help when building out a grid-style weakness system. We also have a variable for keeping track if an extra turn is happening or not. The first method we have sets up enemy weaknesses. In this case, we are only setting one weakness, but we could set several if we really wanted to. Usually settings like these are handled by game designers. In games like this, most enemy data is stored in a larger file that'll be called upon when needed. The next method deals with user input. We inform the player on different attacks available to them. Then, an integer is created to store the command input. If an invalid data type is input, the game will loop until an integer is used. Once an integer is input, we check to see if it's a valid selection. If not, we keep asking the player for the right input. Last, let's take a look at our game loop. We reset extra turn on every go around. Then, we get player commands from our method. Based on the attack chosen, we look to see if a weakness has been hit. If the enemy is weak to that attack, then you get an extra turn. And if you have an extra turn, you get to do it again. Then, the enemy may get a chance to attack after that. In modern Persona games, you can usually stack these extra attacks by attacking enemies you haven't exploited yet. So, that covers our approach to a simple Persona weakness system. Hopefully, you were able to learn something from it. You can actually find the code at the GitHub link below. If you have any thoughts, comments, leave them below as well. Thanks for watching and catch you next time.